Yeah, it's always good to talk every once in a while about the situation in the real estate market. It's really a mess out there. And there was an editorial today in the New York Post, New York City's coming housing disaster. And I think that it also applies to just about everywhere. Maybe it's worse in New York City, but there was a study that came out of a group of owners and operators that have more than 400,000 units. And they estimate that the rent-regulated tenants, rent control, they are down in the city. They have not paid over $1.1 billion in rent. More than 180,000 such tenants just in New York City are more than 2 months in arrears. That's a fifth of all rent-regulated tenants. Pre-pandemic, 11 months ago, it was 1 in 20. Now it's 1 in 5. Over 50,000 tenants owe more than $15,000 to the landlords. Landlords' operating income is down 22%. Their operating expenses are up 10.7%. A brutal equation. Yeah, no kidding. Meanwhile, property owners are already behind $500 million in property taxes before another $13.7 billion was due early this month. Some landlords also can't keep up with maintenance costs. With some buildings already starting to deteriorate, the city is just a few more disastrous months away from property owners having no choice but to abandon their buildings altogether. This is a dangerous time in real estate. And we wanted to talk with Justin Manning from jjmanning.com, which is the big auction company for real estate. Justin, it's not that bad. In Massachusetts, I think they ended the eviction ban, right? But it's still kind of hard to get rid of people who are living in your units and not paying tax, not paying rent, isn't it?
Yeah, and the reason why, Howie, is that you have two things running in tandem. You've got the governors running the statewide mandates, and then you've got the CDC or in the federal government also dual tracking the same type of moratoriums and restrictions. So just as one seems like it's easing up, the other one ramps up. So it's, I think you mentioned Laurel and Hardy before. So you've kind of got this back and forth where at what point is it going to change where we can get back to business, understanding and being sensitive to those that truly have suffered from COVID. Let's get beyond that, get back to business, and not allow people to abuse COVID and use it as an excuse to not pay rent on a contract that's a valid contract with another party that's willing to hold up their part.
How are these tenants ever going to make up this money that they owe? They're not, are they?
No, because they've already talked about it. I was reading some articles related to the federal side of this and HUD, and it looks like, you know, the idea of the tenant paying a lump sum at the end of this, how does that work? I mean, as it is now, if they're collecting or getting their stimulus money or whatever it is, how could one expect somebody who truly can't pay or doesn't want to pay to come up with a lump sum of 6-10 months at the end of this? It's a complete mess that's never been seen before.
And of course, again, you have to. Anyone who knows property knows this. You have to pay your real estate taxes every 3 months, and the city or the town is not going to say to you, well, you have a couple of deadbeat tenants, so you can take a pass. That just doesn't happen, right? So
no, and you understand too, Howie, that push is going to come to shove in some of these harder hit areas. The municipality is going to have a major decision to make, because there's all different types of auctions. There's foreclosure auctions due to non-payment of the mortgage. There's also foreclosure. Remember, what's ahead of your mortgage, who always gets paid first, is the city or town. They're first in line with their handout. So if they haven't been getting paid as well, now all of a sudden, what are they going to do? They're going to have to force a municipal foreclosure. So because in these foreclosures, there's a line. You got the city or town, you got the mortgage holder, and maybe another second mortgage holder. But the point is that push is going to come to shove, and you know, we have conducted some municipal auctions, Howie, honestly, you know.
What, for the cities or towns, you mean?
Right. I mean, a lot of it's kind of older. It's almost like they've got old stuff in the chute that they need to push out the other side because they need the money. But it's filling up. It's going to begin to burst where, you know, the cities and towns, they have budgets,
right,
and they have to meet those, and they're going to have to come up with it. So now, hey, we'll sell some of these old tax title properties we have, but now all of a sudden you're going to have an influx in some tougher areas, and you're going to see an uptick in what you call municipal foreclosures for non-payment of real estate taxes, and that's why the disconnect right now is that if the tenants don't have to pay, then the property owner should not have to pay. And the problem is those two parts, it's not like this is not a synchronized dance between those two parts. They're both moving on in their own way. And so if it's not going to in order to be fair, in order to move forward in a proper fashion, they have to both be given forbearance. It can't be one over the other, and it has to be done in a proper fashion.
Charles Gasparino in the New York Post has a column saying that that Biden gets in there, they're going to try to use Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac again, like they did in the run-up to the disaster of the Great Recession in 2008, 2009. They're going to try to give out mortgage loans to people who shouldn't be getting them, because they can't afford them. And it's going to set up another one of these real estate bubbles that's going to eventually come crashing down on everybody who's legit.
And you couldn't be more on point with that. And my late dad used to have a great observation about all this. He would say, because they make home ownership, they make it like
it's a right.
Exactly. But that, in order to be American and in order to be, I guess, impressive to others, you need to own your property. You need to own your home. Well, unfortunately, there are certain people that should not buy a home. And in addition to that, with regard to the property, what ends up happening is just because a family or a couple can afford that mortgage payment for that asset doesn't mean the asset is worth what they are paying. So what my dad's point back in the day was, just because you can fit the mortgage payment into your current budget, which could change if either one of you got fired or got sick or, God forbid. But the bottom line is, when we go to buy something, I know that you're known as a cheap bastard. So when you go to buy something, you look at the price of it. So it's almost gotten to a point now where home ownership is being pushed by the government so aggressively that people just need to own and want to own a home, but they're not qualified to own a home, and they're overpaying for the property.
You would think that the government, you would think that Biden and these Democrats would have learned something from what happened not 100 years ago, 12 years ago. This was a disaster. It almost brought down the entire world economy. Justin Manning, what do you offer? JJ Manning, what do you offer people? What kind of people should be looking to maybe give you a call and utilize your services to get rid of their property?
No, absolutely. Across the board, from the person that is looking at a scenario of, hey, I have equity in my property, but I might get foreclosed because I lost my job and I need to move this property. We can help them. These days, I'd say the highest volume of clients that are reaching out to us for help are those that have looked at what the pending capital gains tax change is going to be. Meaning, I don't know it. It hasn't been, I think, put pen to paper officially, but it looks like the capital gains tax is going to double. Okay, I didn't stutter. It's double. So what does that mean? That means a family, maybe there was a recent inheritance, maybe there's a property and they've decided, hey, I want to sell and I want to move down to Florida with Howie, where the economy's run as if there is no. I was just down there to see my in-laws. There is no COVID down there. Everything's open 100%, and people decide what they want to do or what they don't want to do, which is really what needs to happen.
Right.
But I digress. The point is that those that are looking at an asset where they want to sell it they plan to sell it in the next 5 years, wouldn't just sell it right away talk to your accountant and sell it right away so that you could avoid that double capital gains penalty if you're not going to do a 1031 exchange. Why wouldn't you want to sell it now, quickly, contingency free, for as much money as you can, and move on to the next segment of your life?
978, could you ask him what he thinks about industrial commercial future? I own a building with 3 quote-unquote essential businesses. What's my future?
I would wonder where it was, but I think that over the last 4 years, industrial properties have become relevant again because it became more and more important to the administration to have things manufactured here.
Yeah.
And I don't know what's going to happen. So again, we get back to, where is the asset? What is it producing? Could it be, again, we get back to what we talked about before, repurposing. You know, we recently just had a foreclosure we handled of a substantial hotel. And it sounds like it's going to get repurposed into a hotel / nursing home. You know, because something needs to change, because certain segments of business are becoming irrelevant.
Like hotels. Like hotels in the major cities, and like down in Florida, they're not irrelevant, but in major cities they are. So this is a very, that's why I always say in the commercials that this is a very treacherous market for both commercial and residential. And so people could, where can people go if they want to talk to you? And you do auctions, and again, the buyer in an auction, the buyer pays you, not the seller. So that's an advantage right there. But where can people go to find out more about that JJ Manning?
Let me tell you that the two things I want to tell you really quickly is that the buyer is going to pay the commission and the sale will be contingency free. And that's the important points for people to understand. And if they have an interest, no obligation whatsoever. We'll talk through it. Contact my man, Charlie Gill, at JJ Manning Auctioneers at 800-521-0111, or visit our website at jjmanning.com.
Give us the phone number one more time, Justin.
Thanks, Howie. 800-521-0111.
All right. Thank you, Justin. That's good stuff. It's you know, you gotta stay on top of this stuff, especially if, like you said, if you're wanting to cash out in within the next few years. This is probably as good a time as any before the Bidens get their hands on the economy again. Thank you. Oh, here's a spot for JJ Manning. With the incoming administration barging their way into office, this may cause some economic disturbance. Tax laws are going to change, as Justin just said. Your tax burden on selling real estate will grow. Don't get caught flat-footed and squander the equity in your real estate. Sell today with JJ Manning. For over 40 years, JJ Manning has been the leading auction house in New England. From high-end homes to estates to commercial properties throughout New England, JJ Manning can get your property sold fast and contingency-free. There is a big reason why Mass Lawyers Weekly voted JJ Manning #1 for 4 consecutive years, because they have a huge following of bidders who pay cash. When you sell with a broker, you pay the commission, but in an auction, the buyer pays. To learn more about how to get your property sold fast, contact Charlie Gill at jjmanning.com. With over 16,000 sales and satisfied clients, you could be the next one. Call them today at 800-521-0111 or go to jjmanning.com and get your property sold. I'm Howie Carr.
He's New England's talk radio king. He's Howie Carr.